The psychic scream hit the planet of Orestes Prime at exactly midnight. It was not a sound that ears could hear. It was a sound that souls felt. In the lower levels of Hive City, Gloriana, 10,000 workers fell to the floor at the same time. Their noses bled. Some of them did not stand up again. The sky above the city changed color. It went from a dirty gray to a sick and bruising purple. The air smelled like ozone and old copper. This was the start of the warp storm. The planetary governor tried to send a message to the rest of the Imperium. He wanted to ask for help. He wanted to ask for Space Marines. But the astropaths, the blind psychics who send messages through dreams, were all screaming. They could not send messages. They could only see fire. The planet was alone. Castellan Vance stood on the wall of the upper spire. He looked through his magnoculars. He was a soldier of the Astra Militarum. He had fought in 3 wars, but his hands shook now. Down below, in the streets, the people were rioting. But it was not a normal riot. The people had carved strange symbols into their skin. They shouted names that hurt to hear. The cult of the Nine Change had been hiding in the city for 100 years. Now they revealed themselves. They had sabotaged charges on the main power generators. The lights in the southern districts flickered and died. Darkness covered half the city. In that darkness, the screams began. Vance gripped the railing. He knew the doctrine. He knew he had to hold the line until the ammunition ran out. Then he had to fix bayonets. Then he had to die. That was the Emperor's will. A sergeant ran up to Vance. The sergeant was covered in dust and black oil. He held a data slate. He said that the southern gate was broken. He said that things were coming out of the shadows. These things were not human. There were pink and blue horrors that threw fire. The fire did not burn flesh. It changed flesh. It turned men into glass or slime. Vance looked at the tactical map. It showed red lights everywhere. They were losing. The logic engines in the command center sparked and smoked. The machine spirits were in pain. The tech priests prayed to the gears, but the gears did not answer. The planet was slipping into the warp. The barrier between the real world and the nightmare world was thin like paper. Then the moon rose. Orestes Prime had 3 moons. 2 were small asteroids. One was large and pale yellow. But tonight, the large moon was not yellow. The clouds parted above the burning city. The wind stopped blowing. The smoke from the fires flattened out. A beam of light hit the highest tower of the central cathedral. The light was not from the sun. It was cold and silver. The rioters down in the streets stopped screaming. They looked up. The moon had turned bone white. It looked like a dead eye staring at the chaos below. The purple clouds tried to cover it, but the white light burned through them. The light was heavy. It felt like a weight on the shoulders of every living thing. Vance looked at the cathedral. A figure stood on the edge of a stone gargoyle. The figure was small compared to the giant statues, but he was easy to see. He wore a suit of white cloth. He wore a white cape that hung down like a broken wing. He wore a white hood and a white mask. There was no dirt on him. There was no blood on him yet. He looked like a statue that had come to life. The cultists near the cathedral gate pointed their autoguns at him. They fired. Bullets sparked against the stone. The figure did not flinch. He did not take cover. He just watched. The Voxcaster on Vance's belt crackled. Usually, it was full of static and panic. Now a voice cut through the noise. It was not an imperial voice. It was not a chaos voice. It sounded like stone grinding on stone. It sounded ancient and angry. The voice spoke to everyone in the city at once. It said that the travelers of the night were under protection. It said that the innocent had paid enough. It said that the debt was due. The figure on the cathedral jumped. He did not use a jump pack. He did not use anti-grav technology. He fell with the weight of a rock. He landed in the middle of a group of mutants. He stood up. He held two crescent-shaped blades. The silver light of the moon reflected off them. The slaughter began in total silence. The white figure moved faster than a man should move. He did not move like an Astartes. A space marine moved like a tank that had learned to sprint. There was weight and noise in their movement. This figure moved like smoke. He spun and ducked. The cultists fired their autoguns. The bullets hit his white cloak. They did not tear the fabric. They fell to the ground like pebbles. The figure threw a silver crescent. It flew through the air in a curve. It hit 3 men in the neck before it returned to his hand. It defied physics. Castellan Vance watched with his mouth open. He had never seen a weapon act like that. The cultists were confused. They were used to fighting scared guardsmen. They were not used to fighting a ghost. A pink horror jumped from the burning wreckage of a chimera transport. The demon was made of raw magic. It opened its mouth and shot pink fire. The fire hit the white figure in the chest. Vance flinched. That fire could melt plasteel. The white figure was thrown backward. He hit the stone wall of the cathedral. He slid down to the ground. He did not move. The cultists cheered. They shouted praise to the changer of ways. They thought they had won. Vance gripped his las pistol. He prepared to order his men to fire. But then the pile of white cloth stirred. The figure stood up. The chest of his suit was black and smoking. But as he stood, the moon above pulsed. The white light washed over him. The black burns faded away. The white cloth became clean again. The figure rolled his shoulders. He did not look in pain. He looked annoyed. Inside the mind of the white figure, a voice spoke. The voice was deep and old. It sounded like the cracking of dry bones. The voice belonged to Khonshu. Khonshu was not happy. He looked at this world. He saw the warp storms. He saw the demons. He told Marc Spector that this place was an abomination. He said that these creatures had stolen the fear of the night. The night was supposed to be for travelers. It was supposed to be for justice. But here, the night was full of monsters. Khonshu demanded payment. He wanted the skulls of the sorcerers. Marc Spector listened. He felt the pain in his chest fade. His body was broken a moment ago. Now it was whole. This was the deal. He served the moon god. In return, death could not hold him. Marc ran forward again. This time he did not throw blades. He used his fists. He punched the pink horror. His gloves were white, but they hit with the force of a hydraulic hammer. The demon squealed. It did not bleed blood. It bled light. It split into 2 smaller blue horrors. They were angry and sullen. They tried to grab his legs. Marc stomped on them. He crushed them into paste. The cultists panicked. Their magic did not work. Their bullets did not work. They dropped their weapons and tried to run. But the figure was everywhere. He broke arms and legs. He did not kill everyone. He left some alive. They were broken and weeping. This was a message. Vance saw the battle end. The plaza was silent except for the groans of the wounded. The white figure stood in the center of the carnage. His suit was spotless. The blood of the aliens and heretics did not stick to him. It slid off like water on oil. Vance walked out from the gate. He kept his hand near his gun. He did not know if this was a friend or a foe. In the Imperium, anything unknown was usually a threat. He stopped 10 meters away. He cleared his throat. He asked the figure to identify himself. He asked for his regiment and his authorization code. The figure turned his head. The mask showed no face. It was just a white hood and deeper shadows where eyes should be. But Vance felt eyes on him. He felt judged. The figure did not speak High Gothic or Low Gothic. He did not speak at all. He pointed at the sky. He pointed at the moon. Then he turned around. He walked toward the dark alleyways of the Hive City. Vance shouted for him to stop. He said that movement was restricted. He said that martial law was in effect. The figure ignored him. He walked into the shadows and vanished. Vance blinked. There was nowhere to go in that alley. It was a dead end. But the figure was gone. Vance went back to the command center. It was a bunker made of thick concrete. Inside, the air was recycled and smelled of sweat and machine oil. He went to the logic engine. He typed in a report. He described the white suit. He described the crescent blades. He described the healing. The machine hummed. It searched the archives of the administratum. It looked for records of a Space Marine chapter with those colors. It looked for records of an Imperial saint. The search took 1 hour. The screen flashed green. It said, "No record found." Vance felt a cold sweat on his neck. If there was no record, then the figure was unsanctioned. In the eyes of the law, he was a heretic. But he had saved the cathedral. Vance had a choice. He could report the truth, or he could lie. If he reported a rogue psyker, the Inquisition would come. They would burn the city to kill one man. Vance looked at his tired soldiers. He deleted the line about the healing. He wrote that a mercenary in experimental armor had assisted the defense. It was a small lie, but Vance hoped it would save them. Deep in the Underhive, the cult of the Nine Change was gathering. They hid in the sewers where the waste of millions flowed like a river. The walls were covered in glowing runes. The leader was a sorcerer named Magister Zal. Zal had 3 eyes. The third eye was on his forehead, and it cried black tears. He was looking into a bowl of blood. He was trying to see the future. Tsench was the god of fate. His servants usually knew what would happen. But tonight, Zal saw nothing. The future was a white fog. This frightened him. He had planned this uprising for 10 years. He had bribed the guards. He had corrupted the water supply. The demons were supposed to eat the soul of the planetary governor tonight. But the white figure had stopped the attack on the cathedral. Zal slammed his fist on the table. He asked his spies who the enemy was. The spies were mutants with rat faces. They trembled. They said the enemy had no mind signature. When they tried to read his thoughts, they heard only noise. They heard many voices screaming at once. They heard the sound of rock grinding on rock. They said he was not a psyker. He was something else. Zal did not like this. If he was not a psyker, why could he resist the fire of the warp? Zal decided to change tactics. He would not send soldiers. He would send a beast. He went to a heavy iron cage in the corner of the sewer. Something big was inside. It breathed heavily. It smelled of wet fur and rotten meat. Zal whispered a spell. The lock on the cage clicked open. High above in the spire, the tech priest engine seer Delta 9 was confused. He was examining the security footage of the plaza battle. He slowed down the video. He zoomed in on the white figure. His bionic eye whirred. He was trying to analyze the armor. The machine spirit of the camera was old and grainy. But Delta 9 could see enough. The suit rippled like fabric. It folded and creased. It did not have the rigid plates of ceramite. It did not have the servo motors of power armor. By all logic, a laser gun shot should burn right through it. But the video showed the laser dispersing. It washed over the white cloth and vanished. Delta 9 ran a calculation. He checked the atomic weight of known materials. Nothing matched. Delta 9 believed in the Omnissiah, the machine god. He believed that all knowledge already existed. It just had to be found. This white material was archaeotech. It had to be from the dark age of technology. Maybe it was a personal force field woven into thread. The value of such a thing was infinite. Delta 9 felt a surge of greed in his logic coils. He wanted that suit. He wanted to dissect it. He sent a binary signal to his Skitarii servitors. They were cyborg soldiers who felt no fear. He ordered them to hunt the white figure. He told them to set their weapons to stun. He did not want to damage the holy technology. He did not care about the man inside. The flesh was weak. Only the machine mattered. Marc Spector sat on a gargoyle overlooking the industrial district. He was tired, not physically. The suit took away the physical fatigue. But his mind was tired. He had just fought a war in another dimension. Now he was here. He did not know where here was. The buildings were too big. The air tasted of chemicals. The people looked miserable. Khonshu was loud tonight. The moon god was pacing around Mark's mind. Khonshu told him that this world was ripe. He said the corpse emperor they worshipped was a weak idol. Khonshu wanted to show them a real god. He wanted them to fear the moon. Mark argued back. He spoke out loud to the empty air. He told Khonshu to shut up. He said they needed to find food and water. He said they needed to figure out who the bad guys were. Khonshu laughed. He said the bad guys were the ones with the 8-pointed stars. That was easy enough. But Khonshu also said the ones with the golden eagles were not innocent. They were cruel. They crushed the weak. Mark looked down at the street. He saw a squad of enforcers beating a civilian. The civilian had stolen a loaf of bread. The enforcers hit him with shock batons. They were laughing. Mark felt his anger rise. This was not justice. This was bullying. Khonshu whispered. He told Mark to go down there. He told him to break their hands. Mark hesitated. He had fought the monsters. Did he have to fight the police too? Khonshu said yes. Justice was for everyone. The badge did not protect them from vengeance. Mark stood up. He adjusted his cape. He jumped. He landed on the lead enforcer. The man crumpled under the weight. The other 3 enforcers spun around. They saw the white ghost. They froze. They had heard the rumors from the cathedral. They thought he was a myth. Mark did not give them time to think. He kicked the baton out of one man's hand. He punched another in the helmet. The visor cracked. The enforcer fell. The last one tried to run. Mark threw a crescent dart. It caught the man's belt and pinned him to a wooden crate. The man struggled but could not move. The civilian on the ground looked up. He was bleeding. He saw the white mask. He started to cry. He thought this was an angel. He tried to touch Mark's boot. Mark pulled his foot away. He did not want worship. He wanted them to go home. He told the man to run. The man scrambled away into the dark. Mark looked at the enforcers groaning on the ground. He retrieved his dart. He looked at the pinned enforcer. He asked a simple question. He asked where the corruption was coming from. The enforcer was terrified. He stammered. He said he didn't know. Mark leaned in close. The eyes of the mask glowed with a faint white light. He asked again. The enforcer broke. He said there were rumors of a gathering in the old water purification plant. He said the mutants were taking prisoners there. Mark turned away. He had a target. He launched a grapple line to the roof above and ascended. The enforcers stayed on the ground. They were too scared to report this. They knew their superiors would execute them for failure. At the water purification plant, the smell was worse. It smelled of sulfur and decay. The plant was a massive structure of rusted pipes and spinning fans. It was dark inside. The only light came from green chemical vats. Magister Jal was there. His cultists were chanting. They had 10 prisoners tied to a railing over a vat of acid. They were going to sacrifice them to open a warp rift. Zal held a jagged knife. He raised it high. The glass skylight above them shattered. Moon Knight dropped into the room. He landed in a crouch. The glass shards rained down like diamonds. He did not wait for them to react. He threw 3 darts at once. They hit the cultists holding the ropes. The cultists fell. The prisoners were safe for a moment. Zal screamed in rage. He pointed his staff at Moon Knight. A bolt of blue lightning shot out. Moon Knight dodged. The lightning hit a steam pipe. Steam exploded into the room. It was hot and blinding. Moon Knight used the cover. He moved through the steam like a predator. He took down cultist after cultist. He broke ribs. He shattered knees. He was brutal. He wanted them to fear him. Zal saw his men falling. He chanted a word of power. The heavy iron cage in the corner burst open. The beast came out. It was a chaos spawn. It had once been a man, but now it was a mountain of muscle and tentacles. It had no eyes, only a mouth full of needle teeth. It roared. The sound shook the rust off the ceiling. It charged at Moon Knight. It was fast for its size. Moon Knight tried to jump over it, but a tentacle caught his ankle. He was slammed into the floor. The concrete cracked. The breath left his body. The beast raised a massive fist to crush him. Khonshu screamed in his mind. He told him to get up. He told him he was the Fist of Khonshu. He could not die here. Moon Knight reached into his belt. He pulled out a small silver ankh. It glowed. He jammed it into the tentacle holding him. The beast howled. The silver burned its corrupted flesh. It let go. Moon Knight rolled away. The fist smashed the spot where his head had been. Moon Knight stood up. He was hurt. He could feel ribs shifting, but the suit held him together. He looked at the beast. He realized he could not beat it with strength. It was too strong. He had to be smart. He looked at the vats of acid. He looked at the catwalks. He ran toward the edge of the platform. The beast chased him. It destroyed the metal railings as it ran. Moon Knight waited until the last second. He stood at the edge of the acid vat. The beast lunged. Moon Knight dropped flat. The beast's momentum carried it over him. It could not stop. It fell into the green liquid. The acid did not just burn. It was chemical waste from the weapon factories. It dissolved biomass in seconds. The beast screamed as it melted. It tried to climb out, but its limbs were turning to jelly. It sank beneath the surface. The bubbling stopped. Magister Jal stood alone. His bodyguards were unconscious. His beast was dead. He looked at the white figure standing in the steam. Zal felt true fear for the first time. He realized this was not an agent of the Corpse Emperor. This was a rival god. Zal opened a portal behind him. It was a tear in reality, swirling with purple energy. He shouted that this was not over. He stepped backward into the portal and vanished. The rift closed. Moon Knight was alone with the prisoners. He cut their bonds. They were terrified of him. They huddled together. One of them, a young woman, asked him who he was. He looked at her. He adjusted his white cloak. He said he was the one who wakes up when they go to sleep. He told them to leave. He watched them run to the exit. He felt a vibration in the floor. It was not a monster. It was a rhythmic marching. He looked through a broken window. Outside, in the courtyard, lights were flaring. A dropship had landed. It was red and black. It bore the symbol of a skull and a cog. The Adeptus Mechanicus had arrived. Soldiers with red robes and cybernetic limbs were deploying. They were scanning the area. They were not looking for cultists. They were looking for the energy signature of his suit. Khonshu laughed. He said the scavengers had come for the scraps. He told Marc to leave. They could not fight an army. Not yet. Marc agreed. He went to the shadows of the machinery. He found a ventilation shaft. He squeezed inside. He crawled through the darkness as the Skitarii breached the doors. He heard them scanning the room. He heard their binary chatter. They found the dead beast in the acid. They found the broken cultists. But they did not find the suit. Marc emerged on a rooftop 3 blocks away. He sat on the edge. He breathed in the smog. The night was still young. The city was still burning in the distance. He had made a dent, but only a small one. He realized that this world was different from his own. The enemies here did not just want money or power. They wanted souls. They wanted the end of reality. The stakes were higher. He looked at the moon again. It felt closer here. It felt like it was watching him more intently. He wondered if Khonshu was stronger here. The magic of this place was wild and loose. If the sorcerers could summon monsters, what could he do? He looked at his hands. He focused. He imagined the suit changing. He wanted it to be harder. He wanted it to be heavier. The white cloth shimmered. It took on a metallic sheen. It looked like carbonadium. He flexed his fingers. The metal plates moved silently. Khonshu was pleased. He whispered that the mind was the only weapon that mattered. In a world where belief shaped reality, a madman was the most dangerous thing alive. Moon Knight stood up. His cape snapped in the toxic wind. He was ready for the next shift. The work was just beginning. In the governor's palace, the planetary governor was shouting at his generals. He slammed his hand on the map. He asked why the southern district had gone dark. He asked why there were reports of a white demon. The generals looked at each other. They were afraid to speak. Finally, an inquisitor stepped forward. She had been in the shadows. Her name was Valeria. She wore black power armor and a wide-brimmed hat. She had a rosette on her chest. Everyone went silent. Valeria spoke softly. She said that she had felt a disturbance in the warp. She said it was not chaos. It was something rigid, something cold. She said it felt like ancient stone. She looked at the reports of the white figure. She did not dismiss them. She was interested. She told the governor to stop hunting the figure. She told him to herd the enemy toward it. She wanted to see what the white ghost could do. She wanted to know if it could bleed. And if it could bleed, she wanted to know if its blood was holy or corrupt. She ordered her own stormtroopers to prepare. They were going to the water purification plant. She wanted to examine the scene. The game had changed. It was no longer just a rebellion. It was a test, and Moon Knight was the subject. But Valeria did not know that she was not the only one watching. High in the orbit, a Necron tomb ship woke from its slumber. Its sensors had detected a signal that matched the energy signature of a Catan shard. The Necrons did not care about the Imperium or Chaos. They cared about the star gods, and they detected the trace of a god on the planet's surface. They began to calculate a teleportation trajectory. The board was set. The pieces were moving, and the moon continued to stare down, unblinking and cold. Inquisitor Valeria walked through the ruins of the water purification plant. Her heavy black boots crunched on glass. The air was still hot from the steam pipes. It smelled of burnt meat and chemicals. She did not cover her nose. An inquisitor had to smell the heresy to understand it. She looked at the vat of acid. It was calm now. The monster was gone. Only a few bubbles rose to the surface. She tapped her cane on the metal grating. Her retinue stood behind her. There was a scribe who wrote down everything she saw. There was a veteran soldier with a hell gun. There was a floating skull probe that scanned the air. Tech Priest Delta 9 stood near the acid vat. He was extending a mechadendrite into the liquid. It was a long metal tentacle with a sensor on the end. He made a clicking sound. He was annoyed. Valeria asked him what he found. Delta 9 spoke in a voice that sounded like a broken radio. He said, "The biomass reading was strange. The beast that died here was mutated, but there was another reading. It was a trace of energy. It was not plasma. It was not laser. It was something older. It matched the energy signature of the white suit from the video." Valeria narrowed her eyes. She looked at the dead cultists. They had been killed with precision. One dart to the neck, one punch to the throat. This was not the work of a maniac. It was the work of a professional. She looked at the walls. There were scorch marks from the lightning. The enemy had fought a sorcerer and won. Valeria knew that fighting magic with physical weapons usually failed. The mind of a normal man would break. But this white ghost had not broken. Delta 9 pulled his sensor out of the acid. The metal was pitted and grey. He said he wanted the suit. He said the machine god demanded it. He said the technology to heal fabric was lost to humanity. If he could find it, he could fix the Titans. He could fix the Golden Throne. Valeria held up her hand. She told him to be careful. Greed was a sin, even for a priest of Mars. She said they would find the ghost, but they would not dissect him until she was done with him. She wanted to talk to him. She wanted to know who he served. If he served the Emperor, he was a tool. If he served himself, he was a threat. Deep in the lower levels of the hive, Marc Spector was eating a ration bar. He sat in the corner of an abandoned subway station. The trains had stopped running 500 years ago. The tunnels were dark and damp. Rats the size of dogs scurried in the shadows. The ration bar tasted like chalk and old fat. It was hard to chew. Marc grimaced. He missed real food. He missed steak. He missed coffee. Stephen Grant spoke in his head. Stephen was the other personality. He was the smart one. He was the historian. Stephen was panicking. He said they were in trouble. He said he had looked at the stars through a grate. The stars were wrong. The constellations were different. They were not on Earth. They were not even in the same time. Stephen said the architecture was Gothic, but the technology was advanced. It made no sense. It was like the Dark Ages had a baby with Star Wars. Marc told Stephen to calm down. Panic killed you faster than a bullet. Marc was a soldier. He knew how to survive in a war zone. You found water. You found cover. You found a weapon. They had the suit. That was enough. But then a third voice spoke. It was Jake Lockley. Jake was the driver, the killer. Jake said they were being hunted. He could feel it. He said the shadows were looking back at them. Khonshu appeared in the tunnel. He was 10 feet tall. He had the skull of a bird. He wore fine white robes. He held a staff with a crescent moon on top. He floated over the dirty tracks. Khonshu did not care about ration bars. He cared about the sky. He told Marc that something was coming. He said the dead were waking up. Not the spirits of the dead, but the cold ones. The ones who hated life. Khonshu hissed. He said he recognized the smell of their metal. It smelled like the grave of the universe. Marc asked what he meant. Khonshu pointed up. He said there were ships in the void. They were not made of wood or steel. They were made of living stone. They were the enemies of the old gods. They were the Necrons. Marc did not know that name, but he felt a chill go down his spine. The suit tightened around him. The white cape grew longer. The mask formed over his face. Khonshu said they had to move. The hunters were here. A green light scanned the tunnel. It came from a small beetle made of metal. The beetle flew silently. It saw Moon Knight. It let out a high-pitched screech. Marc threw a dart. The beetle exploded in a shower of sparks, but it was too late. The signal was sent. 1 mile away, in the plaza, the ground shook. It was not an earthquake. It was a teleportation strike. Green lightning struck the pavement. It was silent and thick. When the lightning faded, 5 figures stood there. They were tall. They were made of silver metal. Their bodies looked like skeletons. They held long rifles with green crystals in them. They were Necron warriors. They did not shout. They did not run. They began to march. They marched in perfect lockstep. They walked toward the subway entrance. The Imperial Guard soldiers at the checkpoint saw them. The sergeant shouted a warning. He ordered his men to fire. Laser guns flashed. Red laser beams hit the silver skeletons. The beams burned the metal, but the metal flowed back together. The wounds closed in seconds. The Necrons did not stop. They raised their rifles. They fired green beams of energy. The beams hit the sandbags. The sandbags vanished. They were stripped apart atom by atom. The beams hit a soldier. The soldier screamed as his skin and bones turned to green dust. There was nothing left, not even ash. In the subway, Marc heard the screaming. He started to run. He ran away from the noise. He needed better ground. He needed to be high up. He found a maintenance ladder. He climbed. He climbed for 10 minutes. He burst out onto a metal walkway suspended between 2 hab blocks. The wind was howling. The air was full of smoke. He looked down. He saw the silver skeletons marching into the tunnel he had just left. But he saw something else. On the other side of the street, the Skitarii were coming. The cyborg soldiers of the Mechanicus. They moved like spiders. They had red robes and glowing blue eyes. They were tracking the radiation of his suit. Moon Knight was trapped in the middle. Delta 9 was leading the Skitarii. He saw the white figure on the walkway. He saw the silver skeletons below. Delta 9 felt a logic error in his brain. He knew the silver skeletons. They were the Xenos Terminus, the Necrons. They were here for the technology too. Delta 9 calculated the odds. If the Necrons got the suit, they would destroy it. They hated biological things. They hated magic. Delta 9 could not let that happen. He ordered his Skitarii to engage the Necrons. He wanted to buy time to capture the target. The street became a slaughterhouse. The Skitarii fired radium carbines. The bullets were radioactive. They hit the Necrons. The radiation interfered with the living metal. The Necrons slowed down. Some of them fell, but more teleported in. A Necron immortal appeared. He was wider and taller. He had a double-barreled blaster. He fired at the Skitarii. The blast destroyed a cyborg completely. Parts of metal and flesh rained down on the street. Moon Knight watched from above. This was insane. Robots fighting zombies. He had to get out of the crossfire. He looked for a route. He saw a gargoyle on a nearby roof. He could make the jump. He stepped back to run. A green beam hit the walkway. The metal beneath his feet vanished. Moon Knight fell. He fell 3 stories. He hit a pile of trash bags. The impact was hard. He felt a rib crack. The suit healed it instantly, but the pain was real. He groaned. He tried to stand up. A shadow fell over him. A Necron death mark stood on the fire escape above. It was a sniper. It had a single glowing green eye. It aimed its long rifle at Moon Knight's head. The air hummed as the weapon charged. Moon Knight rolled to the left. The beam hit the trash. The trash disintegrated. Moon Knight threw his grapple line. It wrapped around the sniper's rifle. He yanked it. The Necron fell from the fire escape. It hit the ground with a heavy clang. Moon Knight jumped on it. He punched the metal face. It was like punching a wall. His knuckles hurt. The Necron did not feel pain. It reached up with cold metal hands. It grabbed Moon Knight's throat. The grip was crushing. It was hydraulic strength. Moon Knight gasped. He could not breathe. He kicked the Necron in the chest. It did not move. Khonshu screamed, "Use the old magic. The metal has no soul." Moon Knight concentrated. He did not use strength. He used the power of the moon. His suit glowed brighter. The white light burned the Necron's hands. The metal began to rust. It aged 1,000 years in a second. The joints seized up. The Necron's eye flickered and went dark. The grip loosened. Moon Knight ripped the hands away. He stood up, gasping for air. He looked at the rusted robot. This was new. He could age them, but it took a lot of energy. He felt drained. He felt dizzy. The street was full of green fire. The Skitarii were losing. The Necrons were advancing. They were not just killing soldiers. They were placing black pylons in the ground. The pylons were made of black stone. They hummed with a negative frequency. The air felt heavy around them. The warp storm in the sky began to calm down, but it was not a peaceful calm. It was a dead calm. The pylons were pushing back the magic. They were cutting off the connection to the warp. Valeria watched from her command post. She saw the pylons. She knew what they were. Blackstone. The Necrons were trying to seal the planet. They wanted to cut off the psychic scream. That sounded good, but it was not. If they sealed the planet, the human souls would be trapped in their bodies. The astronomical light would not reach them. They would be lost in the dark, and the Necrons would purge every living thing to ensure silence. Valeria made a decision. She grabbed the Voxcaster. She ordered the orbital defense batteries to fire. She gave them the coordinates of the street. She was going to shell her own city. It was the only way to stop the pylons. "Danger close," she said. "Fire for effect." Moon Knight heard the whistle of the shells. It was a sound every soldier knew. Incoming artillery. He looked around. There was no cover. The buildings were crumbling. The street was full of enemies. He looked at a sewer grate. It was welded shut. He looked at a store window. It was barred. "Jake," Marc whispered, "get us out of here." Jake took over. His posture changed. He became lower, more feral. He did not look for cover. He looked for a shield. He saw a destroyed Skitarii transport. It was a tank with 6 legs. It was burning, but the hull was thick. Jake ran to it. He slid underneath the chassis. He curled into a ball. He pulled the cape over himself. The cape hardened into a metallic shell. The shells hit. The world turned white. The noise was so loud it was silent. The ground rippled like water. The blast wave tore the buildings apart. The Necrons were blown to pieces. The Skitarii were vaporized. The black pylons cracked and fell. The street ceased to exist. It became a crater. Moon Knight lay under the tank. The heat was intense. The suit was fighting to keep him cool. He could feel the skin on his face blistering. Then the suit healed it. Then it blistered again. It was a cycle of agony. He passed out. When he woke up, it was dark. The fires had died down. He pushed the debris off him. He crawled out from under the tank. The city block was gone. It was just a hole in the ground. Smoke rose from the rubble. The air was full of ash. It snowed grey flakes. He stood up. He was alone. The Necrons were gone. The Skitarii were gone. But he knew they would come back. He checked his body. He was whole. The suit had done its job. But he was hungry. His stomach cramped. The hunger was a reminder that he was still human. He walked through the crater. He saw a piece of green metal. It was a Necron head. The light was out. He kicked it. It rolled away. Khonshu spoke. His voice was quiet. "They are testing the fence," the god said. "They want to see if the wolf is inside." "We are the wolf?" Marc asked. "We are the moon," Khonshu said. The moon controls the tide. We will drown them. Marc climbed out of the crater. He found himself in a market district. It was untouched by the bombs. People were hiding in their shops. They saw him. They did not run. They fell to their knees. They had seen the light show. They had seen the artillery. And they saw him walk out of the fire. The pale saint, a woman whispered. She held a candle. Marc wanted to tell them to stop. He was not a saint. He was a broken man with a voice in his head. But he saw their eyes. They had no hope. The Imperium gave them work and death. Chaos gave them madness. They needed something else. Get up, Marc said. His voice was raspy. Don't pray. Fight. He walked past them. He needed to find the source of the Necrons. He needed to know where they were coming from. Khonshu guided him. He followed the feeling of the cold. It led him toward the spaceport. The Necrons were not just in the city. They were in the sky. High above, in the tomb ship, the Necron overlord sat on his throne. His name was Trazyn, but not the Trazyn of history. This was a minor lord of the Saracen dynasty. His name was Lord Zot. He watched the screen. He saw the humans survive the artillery. He saw the energy signature spike. Zot was intrigued. The energy was erratic. It was not pure Satan. It was mixed with human soul stuff. It was messy, but it was powerful. Zot decided he did not want to destroy it. He wanted to collect it. He wanted to put it in a tesseract labyrinth. It would be a fine addition to his gallery. He tapped a command on his console. He woke up the Lich Guard. These were his elite soldiers. They carried shields and hyperphase swords. He ordered them to teleport to the spaceport. He ordered them to bring the target back alive. Back on the ground, Inquisitor Valeria was looking at the crater. She was impressed. The artillery had destroyed everything, but the ghost had survived. She found the tracks leading away. She saw the tank he had hidden under. It was clever. It was desperate. She turned to Delta 9. We are not the only ones hunting him, she said. The Xenos want him too. Delta 9 clicked. We must acquire him first. The technology must not fall to the aliens. Agreed, Valeria said. But we cannot catch him with soldiers. He is too fast. We need to lure him. She looked at the tactical map. The spaceport was the only way off the planet. The civilians were trying to flee. There were thousands of them at the gates. If Moon Knight was a hero, he would go there. He would try to save them. Send the heavy units to the spaceport, Valeria ordered. Set up a kill box, but do not fire until he is inside. And if the Necrons show up, let them fight him first. We will pick up the pieces. Marc reached the spaceport. It was a chaotic scene. Thousands of refugees were pushing against the high fences. The Arbites, the riot police, were beating them back. They used water cannons and shock mauls. The ships were for the nobility, not the commoners. The people screamed. They held up babies. They begged for passage. Marc felt the anger of the crowd. He felt their fear. Khonshu fed on it. The moon god grew larger in his mind. They treat them like cattle, Khonshu said. Show them the wolf. Marc climbed a cargo container. He looked at the Arbites. He looked at the nobles boarding the gilded shuttles. It was a perfect picture of injustice. He prepared to jump down. He prepared to break the line. But then the sky turned green. This time, there was no warning. A monolith teleported directly into the crowd. It was a floating pyramid of black stone. It was 4 stories high. It hummed with power. The refugees screamed. They tried to run, but they were crushed against the fences. The monolith's crystal glowed. It fired arcs of green lightning. The lightning chained from person to person. It turned hundreds of people into ash in a second. The Lich Guard stepped out of the monolith's portal gate. They were huge. Their shields overlapped. They walked through the ashes of the dead. They looked at the cargo container. They looked at Moon Knight. Lord Zot's voice broadcasted from the monolith. It spoke high Gothic, but the accent was metallic and wrong. "Entity," the voice said. "Surrender. You are property of the Zarakan dynasty." Marc stood up. He unclipped his cape. He let it fall. He cracked his neck. He held up his fists. The white suit gleamed in the green light of the genocide. "I don't belong to anyone," Marc said. "And you're in my light." He jumped. He landed on the shield of the lead Lich Guard. The impact rang like a bell. The skirmish was over. The war had begun. Moon Knight landed on the shield of the Lich Guard. The metal rang like a church bell. The sound was loud enough to hurt the ears of the people running away. The Lich Guard was strong. It did not buckle. It lifted its shield. Moon Knight was thrown into the air. He flipped backward. He landed on his feet in the mud. The mud was mixed with ash. The Lich Guard swung its sword. The blade was a hyperphase weapon. It vibrated at a frequency that cut through dimensions. It did not just cut matter, it cut the air itself. Moon Knight saw the air ripple. He dodged. The tip of the sword cut his white cape. The fabric did not fray. It dissolved. The end of the cape turned into green smoke. Khonshu spoke in Marc's mind. He was angry. He said that weapon was an insult to the night. He said it was a thief of atoms. Marc did not have time to listen to the god. He had to move. There were 5 Lich Guard. They formed a wall. They walked forward. Behind them, the monolith hummed. The green crystal on top of the floating pyramid began to glow again. It was charging another shot. Marc looked at the refugees. They were trapped against the fence. If the monolith fired, they would all die. Marc had to break the crystal. But the Lich Guard were in the way. He needed a distraction. He looked at the Arbites. The riot police were still there. They were shooting at the Necrons with shotguns. The shotguns did nothing. The pellets bounced off the living metal. The Lich Guard ignored the police. They only cared about Moon Knight. Marc switched personalities. Stephen Grant came forward. Stephen looked at the geometry of the fight. He saw the angles. He saw the monolith was hovering. It used an anti-gravity field. If he could disrupt the field, the pyramid would fall. Stephen looked at the ground. There were power cables running to the perimeter lights. They were thick, high-voltage cables. "Jake," Stephen said, "I need the cable." Jake took over. He ran. He did not run at the Necrons. He ran to the light pole. He threw a crescent dart. It cut the cable. The live wire fell. It sparked and danced on the wet ground. Jake grabbed it. The suit insulated him. He held the crackling wire like a whip. He ran back to the Lich Guard. He snapped the whip. The wire wrapped around the neck of the lead Necron. The voltage was massive. It was enough to power a city block. The electricity poured into the Necron. The silver metal turned red. The Necron twitched. Its internal systems were overloaded. It dropped its shield. Moon Knight dropped the wire. He jumped. He used the confused Necron as a step. He leaped over the shield wall. He was in the air. He was flying toward the monolith. The monolith's defense system activated. Small scarab beetles detached from the stone hull. They flew at him. There were swarms of metal insects. They tried to eat his suit. Moon Knight punched them. He tore them off. He landed on the side of the pyramid. The black stone was cold. It felt like touching death. He climbed. He used his fingers like claws. The suit made them hard enough to dig into the stone. He reached the top. The green crystal was right there. It was pulsing. It was about to fire. Moon Knight raised his fist. His hand glowed with white moonlight. He punched the crystal. The crystal cracked. It did not shatter. It was too strong. But the crack was enough. The energy inside became unstable. The green light turned white. The monolith shook. It tilted to the side. The beam that was meant for the refugees fired into the ground. The explosion was massive. It dug a trench 50 meters deep. The shockwave knocked the Lich Guard down. The refugees were safe from the beam, but the ground was shaking. The fence collapsed. "Run!" Moon Knight shouted. "Get out!" The people ran. They ran over the flattened fence. They ran into the wasteland outside the city. It was dangerous out there, but it was better than here. The monolith let out a sound like a dying wail. It engaged its emergency teleport. It faded away in a flash of green light. The Lich Guard vanished with it. They were gone. Moon Knight stood alone in the crater. He was breathing hard. His suit was covered in black dust. He had won the fight, but the war was getting worse. In the command center, Inquisitor Valeria slammed her fist on the table. She had seen the monolith vanish. She was not happy. She turned to the general of the Planetary Defense Force. "You missed your window," she said. The general was a large man with a grey moustache. He was sweating. "My tanks were not in position," he said. "The civilian crowd was too dense." "There are no civilians," Valeria said cold. "There are only potential casualties. The Xenos machine escaped. Now it will repair itself, and it knows our capabilities." Valeria looked at the screen. She saw the white figure standing in the smoke. She saw the refugees running into the desert. This was a strategic disaster. The refugees would scatter. They would be hard to police. If any of them were infected by chaos, they would spread the corruption to the other hives. She made a decision. She looked at the comms officer. "Activate Protocol Vermilion," she said. The general gasped. "Inquisitor, that is extreme. Protocol Vermilion blocks all transport. It shuts down the air scrubbers in the lower levels to save power for the void shields. Millions will suffocate. Better they suffocate than feed the daemons," Valeria said. "Do it, and tell the tank commanders to move up. I want the spaceport secured. If the white ghost is still there, bring him to me. If he resists, shoot his legs." The comms officer nodded. He typed the command. Deep in the hive city, the fans stopped. The giant ventilation fans that pushed air down to the poor districts ground to a halt. The silence was terrifying. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the air began to get stale. The carbon dioxide levels rose. In the sewers, the mutants felt the air change. They knew what it meant. The Imperium was sealing the hive. They were being left to die. This made them desperate. This made them angry. Magister Zal, the sorcerer who had escaped Moon Knight earlier, felt the change too. He was hiding in an old shrine. He laughed. The Imperium was doing his work for him. Despair was the food of the Chaos Gods. As the people in the lower levels realized they were trapped, their fear would power his rituals. Zal looked at his remaining followers. They were few, but they were loyal. He took out a small radio. It was a Vox unit stolen from a dead guard. He tuned it to the emergency frequency. "Citizens of Orestes," Zal whispered into the microphone. His voice was enhanced by magic. It came out of every speaker in the lower hive. "The Emperor has abandoned you. He has turned off the air. He wants you to die in the dark. But the Changer of Ways offers you breath. Come to the Shrine of the Deep. We have air. We have life." It was a lie. But drowning men would grab a snake if they thought it was a rope. Thousands of workers began to march down instead of up. They went deeper into the dark. They were joining the army of chaos. Moon Knight heard the broadcast. He was still at the spaceport. His suit picked up the radio waves. He heard the lie. "He's recruiting," Marc said. "He's panic-mongering. Stephen said. It's a classic siege tactic. Turn the population against the leadership. The leadership turned off the air, Jake growled. They deserve it. Khonshu appeared. He was sitting on top of a burning truck. He looked at the sky. The warp storm was getting worse. The purple clouds were swirling faster. Faces were appearing in the smoke. The barrier is breaking, Khonshu said. The fear of the suffocating millions is acting like a hammer on the glass of reality. If we do not stop this, the sky will open, and then the real gods will come. Marc looked at the tanks approaching. The Imperial Guard had arrived. There were 10 lemon rust battle tanks. They were big, boxy machines with massive cannons. They rumbled over the concrete. They stopped in a line. Their turrets turned toward him. A loudspeaker on the lead tank crackled. Unidentified combatant. Stand down. Kneel and prepare for containment. Marc was tired. He had just fought space robots. Now he had to deal with tanks. He raised his hands. He was not surrendering. He was showing them he was empty-handed. I'm on your side, Marc shouted. There are no sides, the loudspeaker replied. There is only the Emperor. Kneel. The tank gunner was nervous. He looked through his scope. He saw the white mask. He had heard the stories. They said this man could not die. The gunner's finger hovered over the trigger. Suddenly, the ground exploded. But it was not the tank. It was a mine. A burrowing mine. The Necrons had left a present. The mine was a scarab swarm that had dug underground. It detonated under the lead tank. The green explosion flipped the 50-ton machine like a toy. The tank landed on its roof. The track spun uselessly. The other tanks panicked. They thought Moon Knight had done it. Hostile is a psyker, the commander shouted. Open fire. 9 battle cannons fired at once. The sound was deafening. Moon Knight did not try to tank the shots. He could not. A battle cannon shell could destroy a building. He did the only thing he could. He dropped into the crater left by the monolith. The shells hit the edge of the crater. Dirt and concrete rained down on him. He was buried. Darkness. Marc lay in the dark. He was under tons of rubble. The suit protected him from the crushing weight, but he was trapped. The air in the pocket was limited. Perfect, Marc said. Just perfect. We are in a tomb, Stephen said. This is appropriate. We are the avatar of a tomb god. Dig, Khonshu commanded. You are not dead yet. Marc started to dig. He pushed the rocks aside. It was slow work. His hands hurt. But as he dug, he found something. He found a tunnel. The monolith's explosion had cracked the roof of an old subway line. He fell through the hole. He landed on metal tracks. He was back in the underground. But he was deeper now. He was in the transit tunnels that connected the hives. These tunnels were forbidden. They were sealed centuries ago. He saw a light down the tunnel. It was a pale green light. He walked towards it. He found a chamber. It was clean. It was made of black stone. It was a Necron structure hidden beneath the human city. The Necrons had been here the whole time. They had been sleeping under the feet of the humans for 60 million years. In the center of the chamber was a map. It was a hologram of the galaxy, but it was different. The stars were green, and there was a specific marker on this planet. Tech Priest Delta 9 was there. The Tech Priest had found another way in. He was plugging his data spikes into the alien console. He was shaking with excitement. He did not see Moon Knight. Amazing, Delta 9 whispered. The Dolmen Gate. It is here. Moon Knight stepped out of the shadows. What is a Dolmen Gate? Delta 9 spun around. His mechanical limbs whirred. He aimed a pistol at Moon Knight. Then he lowered it. He realized his pistol would do nothing. You, Delta 9 said. The specimen. Answer the question. Moon Knight said. Delta 9 pointed at the map. The dolmen gates are portals. They allow the Necrons to access the webway. The webway is a network of tunnels between stars. It is how the Eldar travel. If the Necrons activate this gate, they can bring their main fleet here instantly. They do not need ships. They can walk from their throne world to this room. So we break it, Marc said. No, Delta 9 screamed. It is archaeotech. It is knowledge. We must study it. If I can learn how it works, I can save the Imperium. I can end the reliance on the warp. And while you study, they invade, Marc said. Marc walked toward the console. Delta 9 stood in his way. The tech priest was small, but he was fast. He lashed out with a mechadendrite. It was an axe. It hit Moon Knight's shoulder. It cut into the suit. Moon Knight felt pain, real pain. The axe was power enhanced. He grabbed the tentacle. He pulled. Delta 9 flew forward. Moon Knight punched the priest in the metal faceplate. The optical lens shattered. Delta 9 fell back against the console. You are a savage, Delta 9 spat. Static leaked from his voice box. You do not understand the value of the machine. I understand survival, Marc said. He raised his fist to smash the console. Wait, Khonshu said. Marc froze. Why? Look at the map, Khonshu said. The gate is not just an entrance. It is a drain. Marc looked. The hologram showed energy flowing into the gate. They are not bringing an army here, Khonshu said. They are sending something away. They are harvesting the soul energy of the dying city and sending it somewhere. Where? Marc asked. To him. Khonshu pointed to a symbol on the map. It was a symbol of a star being eaten by a dragon. The Catan, the star god. They are feeding their god. This changed everything. It was not an invasion. It was a feeding trough. The Necrons had woken up because the buffet was open. Suddenly the room shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The bombardment, Delta 9 said. The Imperium is shelling the coordinates above us. They will collapse the roof. We have to go, Marc said. He grabbed the tech priest. Delta 9 struggled. Leave me. I must download the data. You're coming with me, Marc said. You know how this works. I need you to shut it down. Marc dragged the protesting priest out of the chamber. They ran down the tunnel. Behind them, the ceiling collapsed. The black stone chamber was buried. The map was gone. They ran for a mile. They found a maintenance shaft leading up. They climbed. They emerged in the mid-hive. The air was thin here. The fans were still off. People were lying on the floor, gasping. Marc dropped Delta 9. Fix the air, he commanded. I cannot, Delta 9 said. The command came from the spire. It is a hard lock. Hack it, Marc said. That is heresy, Delta 9 said. To bypass the governor's command is treason. Look at them, Marc shouted. He pointed at a family. A mother was holding a blue-faced baby. Is that the Emperor's will? Delta 9 looked. His logic circuits processed the image. The waste of human resources was inefficient. If the workers died, the factory stopped. If the factory stopped, the machine spirits would starve. Logic dictated that the air must flow. Fine, Delta 9 said. Connect me to a data port. They found a terminal on the wall. Delta 9 plugged in. He fought the security protocols. He was a master of code. He bypassed the governor's lockout. He restarted the fans. A low hum started. The air began to move. The people took deep breaths. They looked at the white figure and the red priest. They started to cry with relief. But the relief was short-lived. The sky tore open. The warp storm had reached its peak. The negative energy from the spaceport slaughter and the fear of the suffocation had broken the final seal. Above the hive spire, a rift in reality opened. It looked like a bleeding wound in the sky. From the wound, drop pods fell, but they were not Imperial drop pods. They were covered in spikes. They were screaming. They were Chaos drop pods. They slammed into the upper spire. They slammed into the noble districts. The doors blasted open. Chaos Space Marines emerged. They were painted blue and gold. They belonged to the Thousand Suns. They were the dust soldiers of Tzinch. They did not shout. They marched in silence, just like the Necrons. But where they walked, reality twisted. The floor turned to glass. The walls turned to flesh. Leading them was a sorcerer. He floated on a disk of blue fire. He held a staff topped with a bird skull. Khonshu hissed in Marc's mind. "A rival," he said. "A false bird." The sorcerer raised his staff. He spoke a word that shattered all the windows in the spire. He was calling to the artifact. He wanted the Dolmen Gate too. The strategic chain reaction was complete. The Necron awakening had caused the Imperial panic. The Imperial panic had caused the suffering. The suffering had summoned chaos. Now 3 armies were on the planet. And in the void of space, a new signal appeared on the long-range sensors of the Imperial Navy. A single ship dropped out of the warp. It was grey. It was jagged. It looked like a shark. It was the Carcharodons, the space sharks. They had heard the distress call. They did not come to save the people. They came to purge the weak. They came to kill the enemies of the Emperor. And to them, everyone on the planet was a potential enemy. Inquisitor Valeria saw the new ship on her screen. Her face went pale. "Throne, help us," she whispered. "The Void Brethren are here." She looked at the tactical map. The Chaos forces were in the spire. The Necrons were in the Foundation. The space sharks were in orbit. And the White Ghost was in the middle. "We have lost control," the general said. "We never had control," Valeria said. "Now we just try to survive." She pressed the button to alert all units. "The Astartes have arrived. Do not engage them. Do not look them in the eye. Stay out of their way. They are not here to rescue you." Marc stood in the mid-hive. He looked up at the ceiling. He could feel the new presence. It felt like cold water. It felt like a predator. "More wolves?" Marc asked. "Sharks," Khonshu corrected. "Blind, hungry sharks. We need a bigger boat," Stephen said nervously. "We need to kill the pilot," Jake said. Marc looked at Delta 9. "Can you track the Necron energy?" "Yes," Delta 9 said. "It is moving. The Necron Lord is moving toward the spire. He is going to meet the Chaos Sorcerer." "Why?" "They both want the gate key," Delta 9 said. "It is in the Governor's vault, the artifact that controls the gate. So it's a race," Marc said. He checked his suit. It was battered. His cape was torn. He was tired. "Let's go," he said. He ran toward the elevator. The race for the spire had begun. The Carcharodons had launched their assault rams. The sky was falling. The drop pods of the Carcharodons. Astra hit the spire like meteorites. They did not use braking thrusters. They relied on the thick armor of the pods and the reinforced structure of the Hive city. The impact shook the entire tower. Dust fell from the ceiling of the elevator shaft where Moon Knight and Delta 9 were climbing. They were climbing manually because the power was fluctuating. The elevator car was stuck 50 floors below. Marc climbed the cables. He carried the tech priest on his back. Delta 9 was heavy. His metal limbs added weight, but the suit compensated. Marc felt his muscles burning, but the moon god gave him strength. Khonshu spoke in the darkness. He said the water was rising. He said the predators had entered the tank. Marc asked who these new Space Marines were. Khonshu said they were the forgotten ones. They were the exiles who lived in the dark places between stars. They had forgotten how to be human. They only knew how to kill. They did not speak. They did not boast. They only hunted. Marc looked at a maintenance hatch. It was bent outward. Something had smashed through it from the outside. He heard no gunfire. He heard only the wet sound of meat being cut. It was the sound of chain axes. They reached the floor of the governor's palace. Marc pried the doors open. He stepped into a hallway that used to be covered in gold and red velvet. Now it was a slaughterhouse. The walls were sprayed with blood, but there were no bodies. The bodies had been dragged away. The carpet was soaked. The air smelled of copper and salt. Marc put Delta 9 down. The tech priest scanned the area. He shivered. His senses picked up no life signs. The palace guard was gone. An entire regiment of elite soldiers had vanished in minutes. Delta 9 pointed down the hall. He said the energy signature of the artifact was in the throne room. It was ahead, but there was something in the way. A group of figures stood at the end of the hall. They were huge. They wore grey power armor. The armor was covered in tribal markings and shark teeth. They stood perfectly still. They were the Carcharodons. There were 3 of them. They held chain axes that were taller than a man. They looked at Moon Knight. They did not ask him to surrender. They did not check if he was a friend. To them, he was just meat. The lead Carcharodon revved his axe. The sound was a low growl. He charged. He moved faster than the Necrons. He moved faster than the eye could track. Marc barely had time to react. He ducked. The axe sheared off the top of a marble statue next to him. Stone chips exploded. Marc punched the Space Marine in the stomach. It felt like punching a tank. The grey armor did not dent. The Space Marine did not grunt. He swung the axe back. The teeth caught Marc's cape. The cape was tough, but the chain axe was made of adamantium. It ripped the cloth. Marc rolled away. He was on the defensive. These things were stronger than him. They were faster than him, and they felt no pain. Khonshu screamed at him to use the environment. Marc saw a chandelier above them. He threw a crescent dart. It cut the chain. The chandelier fell. It was made of heavy crystal and gold. It crashed onto the 2 Carcharodons in the back. They were knocked down, but the leader was still coming. He kicked Marc in the chest. Marc flew backward. He hit the wall. The breath left his lungs. His ribs cracked. The suit healed them, but the shock remained. The Space Marine raised his axe for the killing blow. His helmet was a skull mask. The lenses were black. There was no mercy in them. Marc looked for a weapon. He saw a fallen plasma pistol on the floor. It belonged to a dead palace guard. Marc grabbed it. He did not shoot the Marine. The armor would stop it. He shot the floor. He shot the coolant pipe running under the marble tiles. The pipe exploded. Supercooled liquid sprayed out. It hit the Space Marine's legs. The armor froze instantly. The servo motor seized up. The Marine stopped mid-swing. He was frozen in place. Marc did not wait. He jumped up. He wrapped his legs around the Marine's head. He twisted with all his strength. The frozen neck joint snapped. The giant fell. Marc gasped for air. He had killed one. But there were 2 more getting up from the chandelier wreckage. And there were hundreds more in the city. This was a fight he could not win with brute force. He grabbed Delta 9. He ran. He ran toward the throne room. The heavy doors were made of blast-proof steel. Marc and Delta 9 slipped inside and locked them. Inside the throne room, the situation was worse. The room was vast. It had a high ceiling painted with pictures of saints. At the far end was the golden throne of the governor. But the governor was not sitting on it. The governor was dead. His body was twisted. He had been turned into a portal. His flesh was stretched out like a canvas. Through the hole in his chest, pink fire was pouring out. Standing around the throne were the 1,000 Suns. There were 5 of them. They were rubric Marines. They were empty suits of armor filled with dust and magic. They stood like statues. In front of them was the sorcerer. He was floating on a disk of blue flame. He was chanting. He was trying to pull the artifact out of the vault behind the throne. The vault was glowing. The ancient technology inside was resisting the magic, but they were not alone. On the other side of the room, space rippled. Green lightning struck the floor. Lord Zot teleported in. He brought his Lich Guard with him. The Necron Lord looked at the Chaos Sorcerer. He raised his staff. He hated chaos. Chaos was random. Necrons were order. They were natural enemies. Moon Knight and Delta 9 were stuck in the middle. They hid behind a pillar. Marc looked at the situation. It was a 3-way standoff. The Chaos Sorcerer wanted the key to open a warp rift. The Necron Lord wanted the key to feed his god. The Carcharodons outside wanted to kill everyone. "We have to get to the vault first," Marc whispered. "Impossible," Delta 9 said. "The probability of survival is 0. "Never tell me the odds," Marc said. It was something he heard in a movie once. Stephen liked that movie. The battle started. The Necron Lord fired his staff. A beam of light hit the Chaos Sorcerer's shield. The shield flared blue. The sorcerer laughed. He threw a ball of fire at the Lich Guard. The fire turned the metal into glass. The Lich Guard shattered. The rubric Marines opened fire with bolters. The explosive shells hit the Necrons. The Necrons fell, then started to put themselves back together. It was a storm of magic and science. Moon Knight saw his chance. The 2 leaders were focused on each other. He told Delta 9 to stay put. He ran along the wall. He moved in the shadows. His white suit reflected the colors of the battle. He looked like a ghost. He reached the platform of the throne. The vault door was behind the dead governor. It was a heavy, circular door with a wheel. Marc grabbed the wheel. It was hot. The magic from the governor's body was leaking onto it. Marc pulled. The wheel did not move. It was locked from the inside. "Open it," Khonshu demanded. "It's stuck," Marc grunted. Suddenly, a shadow fell over him. The Chaos Sorcerer had seen him. The sorcerer floated down. He looked at the small human trying to open the door. "The pale one," the sorcerer said. His voice sounded like many voices whispering at once. "You are far from home. Your god has no power here." The sorcerer raised his hand. Invisible chains wrapped around Moon Knight. Marc felt his limbs lock. He could not move. He was lifted into the air. The sorcerer floated closer. He looked at Marc's mask. "I will peel your mind like a fruit," the sorcerer said. "I will see what makes you tick." Marc struggled. He tried to summon the suit. He tried to summon the darts. But his mind was being clouded. He saw visions. He saw the moon cracking. He saw his friends dying. He saw himself alone in the dark. Then a green beam shot past him. It hit the sorcerer in the back. The sorcerer screamed. The invisible chains broke. Marc fell to the floor. Lord Zot stood there. He had shot the sorcerer, not to save Marc, but because he wanted to kill the sorcerer himself. The Necron Lord walked up the stairs. He kicked Marc aside. Marc rolled down the steps. "Filth," Zot said. "Do not touch the device." Zot looked at the vault. He placed his metal hand on the door. Nano-pyramids flowed from his fingers. They ate into the lock. The door clicked. It began to open. Marc looked up. He saw the vault opening. He saw the Chaos Sorcerer recovering. He saw the Carcharodons pounding on the main doors of the room. The steel was buckling. They were cutting through. He had to make a choice. A small choice. He could try to fight Zod. He would lose. Zod was made of living metal and was millions of years old. He could try to fight the sorcerer. He would lose. The magic was too strong. He could run away with Delta 9 and live, or he could change the game. He looked at the dead governor. The portal in his chest was still open. The pink fire was unstable. It was raw warp energy. If that energy touched the Necron technology, it would cause a reaction. Matter and antimatter. Order and chaos. Marc looked at Delta 9. The tech priest was watching him. "Delta," Marc shouted. "Override the gravity stabilizers." "What?" Delta 9 beeped. "That will collapse the spire." "Do it," Marc yelled. Delta 9 hesitated. He looked at the Necron. He looked at the Chaos Sorcerer. He calculated. If the Necrons got the key, the system was lost. If Chaos got the key, the soul was lost. If the spire collapsed, the data might be destroyed, but the enemy would be denied. It was the logic of the scorched earth. Delta 9 plugged his tail into a wall socket. He hacked the building's brain. He turned off the gravity dampeners that kept the mile-high tower standing. The building groaned. The floor tilted. Marc did not wait. He jumped. He did not jump at Zot. He jumped at the dead governor. He grabbed the corpse. It was disgusting. It was wet and hot. He pulled the corpse off the throne. He threw it at the open vault. The body hit the Necron Lord. The portal in the chest touched the living metal. The reaction was instant. A blast of white noise silenced the room. The Necron Lord screamed as his metal body was infected with warp energy. The order of his atoms was rewritten by chaos. He began to rust, melt, and grow feathers all at once. The sorcerer screamed as the backlash hit him. His disk of fire exploded. The explosion blew the vault door off its hinges. The artifact flew out. It slid across the tilting floor. It was a black box with glowing green runes. The room began to fall apart. The ceiling cracked. The paintings of the saints fell down. The main doors burst open. The Carcharodons entered. They saw the chaos. They saw the falling room. They did not care. They charged. Marc saw the artifact sliding toward the edge of the platform. He ran. He slid on his knees. He grabbed the box. It was cold. It burned his hands with cold. "Got it," Marc said. "We are falling," Stephen said. The top of the spire sheared off. The gravity stabilizers were gone. The stress was too much. The top 50 floors of the Hive city detached. They began to slide off the main trunk of the tower. It was a slow slide at first. Then it gained speed. Marc looked at Delta 9. The tech priest was holding onto a pillar. He was sliding. Marc had the box. He could jump out a window and glide. His cape could act as a parachute. He could save the mission. But Delta 9 would die. The tech priest had helped him. He had followed orders. This was the choice, the mission or the man. In the Imperium, you chose the mission, every time. A single life was worth nothing. "Khonshu," Marc said. "We don't leave people behind." "He is a machine," Khonshu argued. "He has no soul." "He's my machine," Marc said. Marc fired his grapple gun. The line hit the pillar next to Delta 9. Marc wrapped the line around his waist. He held the box in one hand. He grabbed Delta 9 with the other. "Hold on," Marc shouted. The spire section tipped over. They were now free-falling. The room turned sideways. Debris, Necrons, and Space Marines fell past them. The Carcharodons fell silently, still swinging their axes at the falling rocks. The Chaos Marines turned into dust as they fell. Marc fired a second grapple line. He aimed for the main trunk of the Hive city, which was rushing past them. The hook caught on a gargoyle. The line went tight. The jerk almost tore Marc's arm off. His shoulder dislocated. He screamed, but the suit held. The white fibers tightened. They popped the bone back into place. They swung in a wide arc. They slammed into the side of the main hive. They smashed through a window. They tumbled into an office. They were safe, relatively. Above them, the top of the spire crashed into the lower city. The impact was like a nuclear bomb. A mushroom cloud of dust rose up. The sound arrived seconds later. It shook the teeth in Marc's head. Marc lay on the floor. He was covered in dust. He held the black box. Delta 9 was next to him. The tech priest was leaking oil. His legs were bent the wrong way. Illogical, Delta 9 said. His voice was weak. You compromised the objective to retrieve a damaged unit. Shut up, Marc said. You're welcome. Marc looked at the box. He had the key, but at what cost? He had just dropped a building on the city. Thousands were dead, maybe millions. This is not a victory, Stephen said. This is a catastrophe. It is war, Khonshu said. The weak die, the strong survive. Marc stood up. He walked to the broken window. He looked out. The dust cloud covered everything. But through the dust, he saw lights. Red lights. The Carcharodons were not all dead. The ones in the drop pods were still down there. And more were coming. They were converging on the crash site. They were looking for bodies. And they would look for him. And deeper in the dust, something else was glowing. A green light. The Necron Lord, Zot. He had survived the fall. His body was twisted and mutated, half metal and half warp beast. He was dragging himself out of the rubble. He was screaming, a scream of pure digital hate. And high above, in the void, the Carcharodon ship moved. It was positioning itself for a bombardment. If they couldn't have the spire, they would level the city. Inquisitor Valeria's voice crackled on the emergency channel. Marc's suit picked it up. All units, she said. Her voice was shaking. The spire has fallen. The governor is confirmed dead. Protocol Vermilion is failed. I am initiating Protocol Exterminatus. Marc froze. He knew what that meant. He had read the files in Delta 9's head. Exterminatus meant they were going to destroy the planet. They were going to burn it all to stop the Necrons and chaos. No, Marc said. They will burn us, Stephen panicked. They will kill everyone. We have the key, Marc said. We can stop this. How? Jake asked. We are one man. We are not a man, Marc said. He looked at the black box. He felt the power inside. It was a piece of a god. A star vampire. We have a god too, Marc said. He looked at Delta 9. Can you patch me into the global Vox? One last time. Delta 9 sparked. My transmitter is damaged, but I can boost your suit signal. Short range only. That's enough, Marc said. I don't need to talk to the people. I need to talk to the sharks. Marc stepped onto the balcony. The wind whipped his torn cape. He held the black box high. Hey, he shouted. His voice was amplified by the suit. It boomed over the ruins. You want this? Come and get it. It was a challenge. It was a suicide note. The red lights in the dust stopped moving. Then they all turned toward him. The Carcharodons had found their target. Khonshu laughed. It was a dry, rattling laugh. Good, the moon god said. Let them come. We will build a temple from their bones. This ended with the target painted on Moon Knight's chest. The final convergence was set. The sharks, the robots, and the orbital laser were all aiming at one rooftop. And on that rooftop, a lunatic in a white suit was waiting to punch them all in the face. The red eyes of the Carcharodons appeared in the dust cloud like stars in a nebula. They did not shout battle cries. They did not rev their chain axes yet. They climbed the side of the ruined building in total silence. They moved with a disturbing grace for men who weighed half a ton. Their grey armour blended with the ash and the concrete. They were the perfect predators. They were the sharks in the water, and the city was the ocean. Moon Knight stood on the balcony. He held the black box in his left hand. His right hand was a fist. The suit was tight against his skin. It was holding his broken shoulder in place. He felt the adrenaline pumping through his veins. But it was not just adrenaline. It was the power of the moon. Khonshu was close. The orbital bombardment had cleared the clouds. The real moon was visible above the smoke. It was full and bright. The first Space Marine vaulted over the railing. He was huge. His armor was covered in exile markings. He swung a chain axe at Moon Knight's head. The weapon screamed as the teeth spun. Moon Knight did not block. He could not block that weight. He ducked under the swing. He punched the Marine in the knee joint. The armor dented. The Marine stumbled but did not fall. He spun around with impossible speed and backhanded Moon Knight. Moon Knight flew through the wall. He crashed into the office where Delta 9 was lying. The impact shattered the desk. Moon Knight groaned. His vision blurred. The suit worked frantically to knit his muscles back together. "Get up," Khonshu whispered. "The tide does not stop for pain." Moon Knight rolled to his feet. The Marines stepped through the hole in the wall. 2 more Marines followed him. They filled the small room. It was claustrophobic. The air smelled of promethium and old blood. Delta 9 made a clicking sound. He tried to crawl away. One of the Space Marines looked at the tech priest. The Marine raised his heavy boot to crush the priest's head. To the Carcharodons, weakness was a sin. A damaged tool was useless. "No," Moon Knight shouted. He threw a crescent dart. It hit the Marine's helmet lens. The lens cracked. The Marine paused. He turned his head slowly toward Moon Knight. He seemed annoyed, like a man who had been bitten by a mosquito. Moon Knight charged. He did not attack the armor. He attacked the weapon. He grabbed the handle of the chain axe. He pulled. The Marine pulled back. It was a contest of strength between a god-empowered human and a gene-forged giant. The Marine was stronger. He lifted Moon Knight into the air. But Moon Knight was counting on that. He planted his feet on the Marine's chest. He used the Marine's own strength against him. He pushed off. He flipped over the Marine's head. As he flipped, he slapped a small explosive disc onto the back of the Marine's neck. It was a crack grenade he had stolen from the palace armory. He landed and covered his head. The grenade detonated. The explosion was contained but focused. It cracked the neck seal of the armor. The Marine dropped to his knees. He was not dead, but his armor systems were offline. He slumped forward. The other 2 Marines did not pause to check on their brother. They advanced. They activated their lightning claws. The blades crackled with blue energy. They slashed at the air, creating a net of death. Moon Knight backed up. He was cornered. He looked at the black box in his hand. He looked at Delta 9. "Is it ready?" Moon Knight asked. Delta 9 nodded weakly. "The interface is open. But if you activate it, the radiation will kill you." "I don't stay dead," Marc said. He placed his hand on the black box. The green runes flared. A pulse of energy shot out. It was not a weapon. It was a signal. It was a command code for the Dolmen Gate. The floor shook. But this time, it was not an explosion. It was a vibration from deep underground. The Necron technology in the planet's core was responding to the key. The Carcharodons stopped. Their sensors were going haywire. The gravity in the room began to fluctuate. Objects started to float. The desk floated. Delta 9 floated. The heavy Space Marines felt their boots lose grip. "What did you do?" Stephen screamed in Marc's head. "I rang the dinner bell," Marc said. He wasn't calling the Necrons. He was calling the distraction. From the hole in the wall, a tentacle shot out. It was made of metal and flesh. It grabbed one of the Carcharodons. The Marine was pulled out of the room with a violent jerk. He vanished into the dust cloud outside. There was a sound of tearing metal, then silence. The mutated Lord Zot climbed onto the balcony. He was hideous. The warp energy had fused his metal skeleton with the biological matter of the dead governor. He had 3 arms. One was a claw, one was a staff, and one was a mass of writhing fingers. His face was a mask of agony. He was glitching between reality and the warp. "Give me the..." "Silence," Zot shrieked. His voice was a digital error. The Carcharodons forgot about Moon Knight. They recognized the greater threat. This was Xenos and Chaos combined. It was the ultimate heresy. The remaining Marine roared. It was a sound like a landslide. He charged at Zot. The battle between the space shark and the mutated Lord was a blur of violence. The Marine's lightning claws tore chunks of flesh and metal from Zot. Zot's staff blasted beams of entropy that rusted the Marine's armor in seconds. They destroyed the balcony. They fell into the room. Moon Knight grabbed Delta 9. He pulled the floating priest toward the elevator shaft. "We have to go up," Marc said. "To the roof." "The roof is targeted by the orbital laser," Delta 9 said. "That is illogical." "It's the only place they can see us," Marc said. "I need them to see the box." They climbed. The gravity was still weird. It made climbing easier. They floated up the shaft. They burst out onto the roof of the mid-hive block. The scene was apocalyptic. The sky was on fire. The orbital laser of the Carcharodon ship was charging. A red light was painting the roof. It was a target marker 300 meters wide. Inquisitor Valeria's voice cut through the static in Marc's helmet. "Target lock confirmed," she said. Her voice was cold. She had accepted the death of the city. "Firing in 2 minutes. Emperor, protect us." Marc stood in the center of the red light. He placed the black box on the ground. He stood over it. He looked up at the sky. "Khonshu," Marc said. "I need a suit. A real suit." "You have my vestments," Khonshu said. "No," Marc said. "I need the armor of the stars. I need to survive a laser from space. Give me everything." "The price will be high," Khonshu warned. "You will not sleep for a year. You will hunt every night." "Deal," Marc said. The moon pulsed. A beam of pure white moonlight shot down from the heavens. It punched through the clouds. It ignored the red targeting laser. It hit Moon Knight. The suit changed. The cloth hardened. It became carbonadium. Then it became something else. It became adamantium woven with starlight. The cape grew wings. The mask became a solid helm of silver. Moon Knight grew. He stood 7 feet tall. He was an avatar of vengeance. The trapdoor to the roof exploded. The Reaper Prime emerged. This was the leader of the Carcharodons. He was a monster. He wore Terminator armor, the heaviest protection a man could wear. He carried 2 chain fists. He was Tiberius the Red Wake, or perhaps his successor. It did not matter. He was death. He saw the white avatar. He saw the black box. He did not run. He walked forward. His steps cracked the roof. "Xenos Tech," the Reaper Prime said. His voice was a deep bass rumble. "Surrender it. Call off the laser," Moon Knight said. His voice was loud. It echoed like thunder. "The laser cleanses," the Reaper said. "The planet is tainted. The planet is full of people," Moon Knight said. "Biomass," the Reaper said. "Replaceable." The Reaper charged. He was slow, but he was unstoppable. He swung his chain fist. Moon Knight caught the blow. The impact created a shockwave. The roof tile stripped away. Moon Knight's new armor held. He did not buckle. He held the Terminator's fist. You are strong, the Reaper admitted. For a mortal. I am not mortal, Moon Knight said. I am the Traveler. Moon Knight twisted his hips. He threw the Reaper. The giant armored warrior flew across the roof. He crashed into a ventilation unit. He stood up instantly. But then, the edge of the roof crumbled. Lord Zot pulled himself up. He had survived the fight in the office. He was missing his legs. He was dragging his torso. He was leaking green fluid and pink fire. Mine, Zot screamed. He aimed his staff at the black box. He fired. Moon Knight dove in front of the box. The beam hit his chest. It was a beam that aged things to dust. But the moon armor did not age. It was timeless. The beam reflected off the silver chest plate. It shot back at Zot. The beam hit Zot in the face. The Necron Lord screamed as his own time magic consumed him. His metal skull rusted and turned to dust in a second. His torso collapsed into a pile of old gears and rotten meat. The threat of the Necrons was ended. The Reaper Prime watched this. He stopped his advance. He looked at the White Knight who had tanked a chronomantic blast. He looked at the black box. He made a calculation. The box was a key to the webway. It was worth more than the planet. It was worth more than the lives of everyone in the city. The Mechanicus of Mars would pay any price for it. If the laser fired, the box would be destroyed. That was a waste of resources. The Reaper lowered his fists. The bombardment is paused, the Reaper said. Moon Knight stood up. Smoke rose from his chest. Paused. Negotiation, the Reaper said. Give the artifact. We spare the city. You leave the system, Moon Knight said. You take your sharks and you go. No, the Reaper said. We take the artifact, and we take the tithe. What tithe? Marc asked. The red tithe, the Reaper said. Payment for protection. Payment for the fuel we burned to get here. We take the strong. We take the prisoners. We take the children who can fight. The rest live. Marc felt cold. This was the deal. Save the city from the laser, but lose thousands to slavery. The Carcharodons recruited from the populations they saved. It was a harvest. That's not saving them, Marc said. That's kidnapping. It is the Imperium, the Reaper said. There is no freedom. There is only service. They will serve in the void, or they will die in the fire. Choose. The red light of the laser intensified. The countdown was almost at 0. Marc looked at the city below. He saw the fires burning in the streets. He saw the people huddling in the dark. If he refused, everyone died. The laser would crack the crust of the planet. Billions would burn. If he agreed, thousands would be taken, but millions would live. It was an impossible choice. It was a choice that broke heroes. Khonshu spoke. Accept it. The strong serve the strong. It is the natural order. I hate you, Marc whispered to his god. I know, Khonshu said. Marc looked at the Reaper. He kicked the black box across the roof. It slid to the giant's feet. Take it, Marc said, and get off my roof. The Reaper bent down. He picked up the box. It looked tiny in his massive hand. He keyed his Vox speed. Object secured, the Reaper said. Cancel exterminatus. Begin the tithe. The red light vanished. The sky went dark. Then the dropships came down. They were not attacking. They were landing in the prisoner camps. They were landing in the refugee centers. The ramps opened. The Carcharodons marched out. They began to herd the people. They took the healthy men. They took the young women. They took the boys who looked angry. They dragged them into the dark bellies of the ships. Moon Knight watched from the roof. He wanted to jump down. He wanted to stop them, but he couldn't. He had made a deal. If he attacked now, the laser would fire. He was a hostage to his own victory. Delta 9 crawled up behind him. The tech priest had fixed his own legs with scrap metal. Optimal outcome, Delta 9 said. The archaeotech is preserved. The planetary infrastructure is 64% intact. The population loss is within acceptable margins. Marc looked at the priest. He wanted to punch him, but he didn't. He just felt tired. The silver armor faded. It turned back into white cloth. The wings vanished. He was just a man in a dirty suit again. "Is this what winning feels like here?" Marc asked. "There is no winning," Delta 9 said. "There is only existence. We exist for another day. Praise the Omnissiah." The Carcharodons ships lifted off. They were heavy with human cargo. They rose into the clouds. The massive battle barge in orbit fired its engines. It turned away from the planet. It slipped back into the void, taking its secrets and its slaves with it. The city was quiet. The Necrons were dead or buried. The Chaos Sorcerers were dust. The sharks were gone. Inquisitor Valeria's dropship descended from the clouds. It landed on the roof. The ramp lowered. Valeria walked out. She leaned on her cane. She looked at Moon Knight. She looked at the pile of rusted junk that used to be Lord Zot. "You have made powerful enemies today," Valeria said. "And powerful friends." "I don't see any friends," Marc said. "You saved my planet," Valeria said. "It is a ruined, weeping mess of a planet, but it is still here. That counts for something." She walked to the edge of the roof. She looked at the devastation. "The Carcharodons are cruel," she said, "but they keep their word. They will not return for a generation." She turned back to Marc. "What are you?" she asked. "A psyker, a saint, a Xenos trick." Marc pulled off his mask. His face was covered in sweat and blood. He looked human. Just a tired man with dark circles under his eyes. "I'm a traveler," Marc said. "I'm just passing through." "Where will you go?" Valeria asked. "The warp storms are still dangerous." "I have a guide," Marc said. He tapped his head. Khonshu was already showing him the next path. There were other worlds, other injustices. The galaxy was full of monsters, and the moon shone on all of them. "The night traveler never stops," Khonshu whispered. "There is a Hive World in the Segmentum Solar. The shadows there are deep. They need us." Marc put his mask back on. The white eyes glowed one last time. "Don't follow me," Moon Knight said to the Inquisitor. He ran to the edge of the roof. He jumped. He opened his cape. He glided into the smoke and the dark. He did not look back at the city he had saved and damned. Valeria watched him go. She signaled her scribe. "Update the file," she said. "Designation: Moon Knight. Classification: Sanctioned Abhuman. Threat level: High. Status: Wandering." "Shall we track him, milady?" the scribe asked. Valeria shook her head. "No, let him go. The galaxy is a dark place. It needs all the light it can get, even if the light is cold." She turned and walked back to her ship. The wind blew the ash across the roof, covering the spot where the deal was made. The history of Orestes Prime would record this day as the day of the Pale Ghost. But in the deep lore, in the secret files of the Inquisition, it would be remembered as the day a man stared down the exterminatus and blinked. The war was over. The nightmare continued. The record of Orestes Prime marks the date 999.M41 as the year of the Silver Tithe. It is a date written in black ink in the archives of the Administratum, but it is written in ash on the walls of the Hive City. 300 years have passed since the events of the siege. The planet still rotates. The factories still produce ammunition for the Emperor's wars. But the world is not the same. The top of Hive Gloriana is still missing. The broken spire stands as a jagged monument against the purple sky. They never rebuilt it. The Mechanicus declared the structure unstable, but the people believe it is cursed. They say that if you climb high enough, you can still hear the screams of the sorcerers who died there. The population of Orestes Prime recovered, as humanity always does, but the culture of the Hive changed. In the lower levels, where the sunlight never reaches, the ecclesiarchy struggles to contain a new superstition. The workers do not just pray to the Golden Throne anymore. When the ventilation fans break down, or when the gangs threaten the weak, the people whisper a different prayer. They light white candles. They draw the sign of the crescent moon on their doors. They pray to the pale saint. The local priests try to scrub these symbols away. They call it heresy, but they do not try too hard. Even the priests know that in the dark, you need a monster to scare away the other monsters. Inquisitor Valeria died 40 years after the incident. She died in combat against the Tyranids on a moon in the Ultima Segmentum. Her personal journals were sealed by the Ordo Hereticus. In those journals, she wrote extensively about the entity known as Moon Knight. She did not call him a hero. She called him a biological weapon that had gone rogue. She theorized that he was not a singular being, but a recurring phenomenon. She believed that wherever the barrier between reality and the warp was thin, and wherever justice had failed completely, the traveler would appear. She recommended that the Imperium should not hunt him. She wrote that you do not hunt a hurricane. You just weather the storm and count the dead when it passes. The fate of the Necron artifact remains a subject of dark rumors. The Carcharodons, Astra, never returned to Orestes Prime. The generation that was taken in the Red Tide is long dead, or they have become elders in the Void Nomad fleet. Reports from the Outer Dark suggest that the space sharks possess a new ability. Their ships have been seen emerging from the webway, the secret paths of the Eldar. If they are using the Dolmen Gate key to hunt the enemies of man in dimensions where no human should go, then the price paid by Orestes was worth it. The logic of the Imperium is cold. 1,000 slaves are a small price for a tactical advantage. Tech Priest Delta 9 was eventually recovered and promoted. He became a Magos. He spent the rest of his life trying to replicate the self-repairing fabric of the white suit. He failed. The technology was not based on science but on belief. The machine god and the moon god were not compatible. Delta 9 died of old age, his logic coils frustrated by the impossible physics of the traveler. As for Marc Spector, there are no official records. He did not board a ship. He did not buy a ticket. He simply vanished into the vastness of the galaxy. But there are stories. A report from the war zones of Armageddon speaks of a white shadow killing orc war bosses in the night. A distress call from a mining colony on Kolth mentions a figure who walked through poison gas to save children. He is a ghost story told by trench fighters. He is a myth, whispered by slaves. The galaxy is a large and terrible place. It is full of gods who laugh at human suffering. The Chaos gods want souls. The Emperor demands sacrifice. The Xenos want extinction. In this universe, a man who fights for nothing but the protection of the innocent is an anomaly. He is a glitch in the system, but he is out there. High above the ruins of Orestes Prime, the moon is full. It looks down with a cold, unblinking eye. It watches the streets. It watches the shadows. And somewhere, light years away, a man in a white suit adjusts his cape, cracks his knuckles, and steps out into the night to begin his work again. The chronicle ends here, but the hunt continues forever.